Okay, so picture this. You finally landed that job offer in Japan. Amazing, right? You see the number, maybe 280,000 a month. Your mind starts racing rent, food, maybe that cool trip you wanted. But then, hang on, what does that 280,000 actually mean? Like after everything? What about bonuses, allowances, taxes? It gets confusing fast.
Yeah.
So today, that's exactly what we're diving into. We're decoding the often quite murky world of Japanese pay. If you're used to how things work in, say, the US or Europe, it can feel like a whole different ballgame. We want to give you that inside track.
Absolutely. And that's really our mission here today, to kind of peel back the layers on Japanese salaries. We want to give you that clarity, that confidence before you start negotiating or before you sign on the dotted line. Think of it like a Japanese bento box, you know. Looks neat, simple on top, but when you open it up, wow, there are all these different components, all carefully arranged. We're going to unpack that bento box together.
Okay, let's lift the lid on that first compartment then, the base salary. When you look at a job ad, you almost always see that monthly number, our 280,000 example. That's the Kihon-Q. It's your guaranteed monthly pay before tax. But, and this is the big but, that number, it's almost never the whole story, is it?
Not even close, usually.
Hmm.
A huge difference from, say, an annual gross salary figure you might see elsewhere is what's missing. Commuting costs, for instance. They're nearly always covered fully by the company, which is a nice perk, actually. Saves quite a bit. Overtime pay. That can be a bit of a gray area. Sometimes it's expected, sometimes it's, well, not explicitly paid. Depends on the culture. And housing allowances. Not everywhere, but pretty common in bigger firms. That can be a serious boost not reflected in that base number.
Right.
And speaking of boosts, let's talk bonuses. These are a big deal in Japan, usually paid twice a year, summer and winter. And we're not talking small change. You could be anywhere from, 1.5 months salary up to maybe 4 or 5 months worth, split between the two. But here's the twist, right? Unlike a performance bonus you might get elsewhere, these Japanese bonuses, they often feel like just part of your expected income. It's not really extra money in the same way. Some companies even roll it into the total annual figure they quote you, which can make offer look better than it is if you're not careful.
Precisely. Which leads us nicely onto allowances, or TEAT. These might seem small, but add them up. They can be really significant, even though they're separate from the base pay. We mentioned commuting. Housing can be substantial. I mean, up to 50,000 a month isn't unheard of in some places. Then you might get family allowances, maybe even extras for language skills or specific certifications. They really pad out that bento box. Okay, so we've got base pay, bonuses, allowances. Sounds pretty good. But now the less fun part, deductions. That shiny 300,000 a month offer? Yeah, you're not taking all that home, not even close. After social insurance, health, pension, unemployment, then income tax, and don't forget resident tax, which usually kicks in after year one, you could easily be looking at only, 70%? 80% maybe of that headline figure. And these aren't things you can negotiate away. Your employer just handles them.
Yeah, and a massive chunk of that is Shikai Honken, the social insurance system. If you're a full-time employee, Seishin, it's mandatory. Covers your health insurance, your pension contributions, long-term care, employment insurance. It's comprehensive. The cost is split 50-50 between you and your employer, but you're half. It adds up. On a 300,000 salary, seeing 40,000, maybe even 60,000 deducted just for Shikai Honken each month is pretty standard. It's a vital safety net, absolutely, but it definitely makes that take-home number smaller than you might first think.
And one last thing in this section, those hidden expectations. They're not on the payslip, but they totally affect your value, right? Like maybe being expected to stay late sometimes without getting overtime logged. Or the idea that bonuses are kind of tied to loyalty, sticking around, not job hopping too much. And in big traditional Japanese companies, raises often lean heavily on how long you've been there, your seniority, maybe more than just pure performance, understanding that hidden stuff, that subtext. It's key not just for your paycheck, but for figuring out how you're actually valued. It's like the secret instructions for the bento box. Okay, let's shift gears. Finding actual salary numbers. This is where it gets tricky. You see those job ads all the time. Salary based on experience. Or just nothing. No number at all. Salary transparency just isn't really a big thing here in Japan, is it? Feels like guesswork sometimes.
It really can feel that way. But here's the thing. While companies might be cagey in job ads, the data's out there. If you dig into government surveys, reliable salary reports, you can get a pretty realistic picture. Let's take some mid-career examples. Annual growth, so before tax. Junior office staff, maybe 3.0 M to 4.0 M in a traditional Japanese firm. But jump to a foreign firm, a gaishikai, more like 3.5 M to 4.5 M, a software engineer, 3-5 years experience. Could be 5.5 M with 7.0 M locally, but 7.0 M on 10 M in a foreign tech company. Big difference. Country manager, We're talking 12M or 15M versus potentially 15M up to 30M or even more in a gaishike. These foreign firms, they consistently pay more, often 15%, sometimes up to 40% more. Why? Well, they usually expect results faster, they really value bilingual skills, and they don't tend to follow those slow seniority-based pay scales as rigidly.
That's a huge difference. And it sounds like certain industries just pay better across the board, too, like
Hmm.
finance, investment banking. You mentioned mid-levels pulling in 8M, 12M.
Easily. And tech is booming sauce. AI roles. Companies are scrambling for good engineers, product managers, tech leads. So you see competitive base pay, sometimes stock options too. Foreign luxury goods, consumer brands, especially if you're a bilingual marketer, that's a strong area.
Right.
And the big global consulting firms. Yeah, they often pay 1.5 times what a similar Japanese consultancy might offer.
Okay, so where does that leave other sectors? Are there areas known for being, well, less lucrative?
Sure, there are sectors that are generally more stable but offer lower pay scales. Education is a big one, especially the Aikawa English Conversation Schools or ALT assistant language teacher roles. You're typically looking at 2.5M to 4.0M a year there. Traditional manufacturing, unless you're in a very senior or specialized role. And local advertising agencies, outside of the really big names, often start around 3.5M to 5M with maybe slower growth prospects. Stable, but different expectations.
And we should probably touch on something that's, well, often uncomfortable but real. The gender and foreignness penalty.
Hmm.
The stats show women in full-time jobs still earn significantly less than men, right? Around 70% on average.
Sadly, yes. The gap is wider than in many other developed countries.
And for foreigners, sometimes you feel like you're starting on a lower rung, even with experience, unless you're specifically hired into a global firm that gets it.
That can happen. There can be assumptions or maybe less access to those internal promotion tracks in very traditional Japanese companies. You might get hired at an entry point salary, and getting raises requires really proving yourself and often, frankly, negotiating hard.
Which brings us to recruiters. They can be super helpful, but you need to remember who they work for, right?
Absolutely critical point. Recruiters are paid by the company making the hire. So while they want to place you, they might not volunteer the absolute top end of the salary range the company has approved. You need to ask directly, what's the approved salary band for this role? And then maybe even more importantly, what are candidates with my kind of background actually getting offered for similar positions right now?
Mm-hmm.
Queally. That helps you cut through any vagueness and get closer to the real market rate.
Okay, let's talk about a big shift happening now. Full-time versus freelance. We're seeing way more people going freelance, becoming free agents, moving away from that classic lifetime employment idea. I saw a stat over 4 million freelancers in Japan by 2023. That's huge. Includes traditional freelancing, but also that Gemu Itaku model, the service contracts.
It's a massive trend. And the key thing for freelancers, they aren't stuck in those fixed company salary bands. You can stack clients, set your own rates based on value. The earning potential could be much higher. Let's look at some ballpark monthly figures, just examples. Freelance copywriter, maybe 400,000 to 800,000. Annualized, that's like 4.8 mena to 9.6 meras. Developer, could be 700,000 up to 1.2M a month, even more. That's 8.4M to over 14M annualized. Bilingual content strategist, 500,000 to 900,000 monthly, so 6.0M to nearly 11M a year. These numbers can definitely outstrip what you'd make in a comparable full-time role sometimes.
Wow, okay. But there's catch, right? All that potential comes with responsibility. You're suddenly your own finance department, HR, everything. Taxes, benefits, finding the next gig that's all on you. It's a big trade-off.
It absolutely is, and that's why full-time employment, being a seishain, still holds enormous appeal for many. You get that Shikai Hoken, the social insurance with the company paying half. That's a huge financial plus. Stability, regular paycheck, those bonus cycles we talked about. And crucially, for many listeners who aren't Japanese nationals, visa sponsorship. That's often tied to a full-time job. Plus, let's be honest, working for a known company carries weight. It helps with loans, renting apartments, building that long-term foundation in Japan.
So the freelance side, what are the main downsides then, apart from doing your own admin?
Well, instability is the big one. No safety net if a client suddenly cuts your project. No unemployment insurance kicks in. Health and pension, you have to sort that out yourself, join the national plans, pay the full premiums. Visas can be tricky if you don't already have permanent residency or a spouse visa. And just the practicalities. No paid time off, no sick days, no automatic bonus months, padding your income. It really is you eat what you hunt.
So who does freelancing really work best for in Japan? Is it for everyone?
Probably not for everyone, no. It tends to suit people who are already quite experienced, definitely bilingual helps a lot, and are comfortable networking, building their own brand. We see it a lot in fields like UX UI design, digital marketing SEO, content strategy, web development, social media, tech project management, areas where skills are project-based and in high demand.
Okay, this next one kind of blew my mind when I was prepping hybrid models. Tell me about that.
Yeah, this is becoming a really interesting, almost underground trend. It's like getting the best of both worlds. People are combining, say, a stable part-time Seychelles role, maybe 3 days a week at a company with freelance projects, consulting, maybe teaching on the side. It offers flexibility, potentially higher overall income, and companies are becoming more open to it, especially for skilled creatives, marketers, bilinguals. You get some stability and benefits, plus the upside of freelance rates. It's a clever way to structure things, like a custom bento box.
Right, let's talk about being a foreigner specifically in the Japanese workforce. You called it a double-edged sword earlier. What does that mean in practice?
Well, it means your non-Japanese background can open some doors and close others, often at the same time. The advantages are clear. Those bilingual skills, especially English-Japanese, are gold dust in many fields: marketing, tech, tourism, PR. Global companies often value the cultural flexibility you bring, that ability to bridge different ways of working. And sometimes that fresh eyes perspective is genuinely welcomed, especially if a company is trying to innovate or internationalize.
Okay, those are the upsides. What about the challenges? The other edge of the sword.
The challenges are definitely there. We mentioned potentially lower starting salary sometimes, that assumption you need to learn the Japanese way.
Hmm.
Less representation in management in traditional firms is a persistent issue. And just the daily friction sorting visas, finding housing, opening bank accounts, it all adds an extra layer of complexity. Plus, some companies might hesitate to invest heavily in promoting a foreigner if they worry you'll only stay for a few years. That perception exists.
So does this mean salaries actually differ for foreigners depending on the type of role they're in?
Broadly speaking, yes. You can almost see two main tracks. There's what you might call the Ikaiwolf language track. Pay is typically in that 2.5M to 4.0M range, often includes visa support, good for getting your foot in the door, but limited long-term growth usually. Then there's the bilingual professional track. Here, salaries can range widely, maybe 5M up to a 12M or much more, depending on your skills and experience. These jobs are those global companies, tech startups, foreign-led businesses. Growth depends heavily on your skills, how well you navigate the culture, and your negotiation ability. And a key point, many foreigners start in the first track, maybe teaching English, and then use that experience and their improving Japanese to move into the second track, marketing, tech, recruitment, business development. It's a common path.
That's a great point. And you mentioned visas earlier. How much does your actual visa status impact things?
Hugely. It's often the elephant in the room during salary talks. If your visa is sponsored by and tied directly to your employer, you naturally have less leverage. You might feel pressure to accept their offer to keep your right to stay in Japan, but if you have a spousal visa or permanent residency, PR, your negotiation power shoots way up. You're not dependent on that specific job for your visa. Hiring managers definitely consider this even if they don't say it out loud. Your visa status is part of their calculation when making an offer.
Okay, beyond pay and visas, what about those cultural norms?
Yeah.
The unspoken rules you need to figure out fast.
Oh, absolutely crucial. And it goes way beyond just language. Things like not trying to constantly stand out or outshine your colleagues. Collaboration and group harmony are highly valued. Humility goes a long way. Punctuality isn't just valued, it's baseline. Being late is a serious faux pas. Right. And understanding the importance of consensus building, nimawashi, before big decisions. Things might seem slower, but skipping that step can cause major friction. Ignoring these norms, it probably won't get you fired immediately, but it can definitely damage your reputation, limit your opportunities, and affect how you're perceived and valued.
And the language piece, you said JLPT N1 or N2 isn't always enough.
It opens doors, for sure. It gets you interviews. But real workplace fluency is deeper. It's about reading complex emails with nuance, understanding context. It's about mastering Kaigo, that incredibly complex system of polite and honorific language. Using the wrong level of Kaigo can sound rude or childish or just off. It's often the biggest hurdle to being fully accepted as a peer in senior roles, especially in traditional firms. And dealing with clients effectively, you absolutely need that level of linguistic and cultural fluency. It's a marathon, not a sprint, but mastering it pays huge dividends.
Okay, we know salary info is hard to come by publicly in Japan. Companies are quiet, raises can be seniority-based, negotiation feels awkward, but you need to know your worth. So how do you actually find reliable data?
Right, despite the salary silence, the data is findable. You just need to know where to look. Your best bets are usually the big Japanese recruitment portals, salary reports. Recruit sites like Rikunabi or Minavi, also Dota. They have huge data sets broken down by job, industry, age, mostly in Japanese, but worth the effort. Then you have Glassdoor Japan, and also Openwork, which is like the Japanese Glassdoor, crowdsourced, salaries, company reviews, really useful stuff. Foreigner-focused job boards, Gaijin Pot, Jobs in Japan, Career Cross often list salaries because, frankly, foreign candidates expect it. And don't underestimate recruiters. Seriously, a good recruiter who specializes in your field sees tons of offers. They have a very real sense of the market rate and can often give you invaluable, if sometimes subtle, hints.
Okay, so you've gathered some data. How do you use it? What's a smart research strategy?
I'd suggest a kind of funnel approach, maybe 5 steps. 1, start broad. Use those big Japanese reports, Recruit, Dota, to get national or industry averages for your role and experience level. 2, zoom in. Check Glassdoor and Openwork for data on your specific target companies or similar ones. See what people report earning there. 3, compare firm types. Actively look for that difference between the traditional Japanese companies and the gaishike. Remember that 15–40% potential gap? 4, ask around carefully. Talk to trusted peers, mentors. Not, what do you earn? But maybe, hey, any idea what a typical range for a role like X is in Tokyo these days? Get anecdotal evidence. 5, cross-reference with recruiters. If you're talking to one, you can say something like, based on my research, roles like this seem to be in the OX to Y range. Does that sound right for this position? See how they react.
That makes sense. So you've done your research, you get an offer. When is the right time to actually try and negotiate?
Timing is everything here. The absolute sweet spot is after you have a firm offer, could be written, could be verbal, but before you formally accepted or signed anything. That's when you have the most leverage. Other good times are if your role significantly changes internally, like taking on major new responsibilities. Or during a formal performance review, if you can clearly demonstrate high impact and exceeding expectations. What you generally don't want to do is bring it up too early in the interview process or just casually drop it into conversation. Keep it professional and strategic.
And what exactly is on the table? Is it just the base salary you can negotiate?
Often, no.
Mm.
Especially if the base salary seems pretty fixed, there might be wiggle room elsewhere. Think about the whole package. Can you negotiate the performance bonus, target, or percentage? What about a sign-on bonus? Or help with relocation costs if you're moving? How about flexibility? More remote work days, those allowances, housing, transport, family storage? Sometimes there's flexibility there. Even extra paid vacation days can sometimes be negotiated. Don't just focus on the monthly number. Look at the total value of the offer.
Okay, so how do you actually say it? Asking for more money feels awkward anywhere, maybe especially in Japan. Got any good phrases?
Yeah, keeping it polite and professional is key. Avoid sounding demanding. Frame it as exploring possibilities. If the initial offer feels low, you could try. Thank you so much for this offer. I'm very interested in the role. Based on my research and experience level, I was hoping for a salary closer to the 07 million range. Is there any flexibility to discuss the compensation further? If they say the base is fixed, pivot. I understand the base salary might be set. I was wondering if there might be potential flexibility regarding a sign-on bonus or perhaps some relocation assistance. Or maybe ask about vacation days. If they ask you for your expectation first, give a range, justifying it slightly. I am somewhat flexible, but based on the responsibilities described and market rates, I'd be comfortable in the 06.5M to 7.5M range, depending on the overall benefits package. For freelance, be direct but polite. For projects with this kind of scope and complexity, my typical monthly retainer falls between $600,000 and $800,000. Clarity is good.
Makes sense. But what if you ask, politely, and they just say no? The budget is the budget. What then?
It happens. And if it does, first take a breath. Reflect. Does the role still offer amazing experience, great learning opportunities? Is it a stepping stone? Are the non-financial benefits strong? If the offer is still appealing despite the salary, you might decide to accept it, knowing you can perhaps negotiate again later once you've proven your value. But if the gap is just too big, if it feels fundamentally unfair or won't meet your needs, it is absolutely okay to decline. Just do it gracefully. Thank them sincerely for their time and the offer. Explain briefly you've decided to pursue other opportunities and wish them luck. Never, ever burn that bridge. Japan's professional world can be smaller than you think.
That's solid advice. What about people who are just scared to ask, like worried they'll seem greedy or the company will pull the offer?
That fear is so common, especially maybe if you're from a culture where negotiation isn't standard, or if you're a woman, or just less experienced. But here's the thing. Good companies, professional hiring managers, they actually expect strong candidates to ask thoughtful questions about compensation. It shows you value yourself and your skills. It's a sign of confidence, not greed. The key is how you ask respectfully, based on research, maybe just once or twice clearly. Then accept the final answer with grace. Asking the question itself rarely causes an offer to be rescinded if done professionally. It's usually okay.
Let's shift now to something a bit deeper, the unspoken divide. Those structural issues around pay inequality in Japan. It's there, even if not always obvious.
It is definitely there. And the gender pay gap is probably the most stark example. We mentioned women in full-time roles earning about 73% of what men do. That gap is persistent. And it's tied into several things. Career interruptions, especially for childcare, are penalized heavily in a system that values continuous service. Fewer women get into management, still under 15%. Traditional expectations about roles still linger. Even negotiation confidence can play a part. There's progress, but it's slow, and the gap is undeniably real.
And then there's the whole seniority system, nenchijuretsu, age equals pay, basically.
In many traditional companies, yeah, that's still a huge factor. The longer your tenure, the higher your base pay tends to climb, almost automatically. The consequence: younger people who are high performers can feel stuck, underpaid relative to their contribution. Mid-career hires, especially if coming from outside or from abroad, might find themselves starting lower than expected because they lack those years of internal service. It can lead to situations where older employees have inflated salaries that aren't necessarily tied to their current performance. It prioritizes loyalty and time served over immediate impact.
Wow. And what about people not on that traditional full-time track? The contract workers, part-timers?
That's the non-regular workforce, and it's huge, nearly 40% of workers in Japan. This includes many women returning after childbirth, older workers, foreigners on specific contracts, dispatch workers. They're often the backbone doing essential work, but they typically face lower wages, fewer benefits like bonuses or full social insurance coverage, and very limited opportunities for promotion or transitioning to C-shame. It's a definite two-tier system in many ways.
So putting it all together, who tends to be most at risk of being underpaid in Japan today?
Based on everything we've discussed, you'd probably say women, especially in fields dominated by men, non-Japanese professionals who might not know the norms or feel less comfortable negotiating, people switching careers midstream, maybe from education or freelance into a corporate role, and frankly, anyone who doesn't do their research and advocate for their value.
Okay, let's look ahead. Things are changing, even in Japan. What are the future trends we should be watching in terms of pay?
Big changes are underway. Remote work is a fascinating one. It started as a pandemic necessity, but now it's a real factor in pay. It challenges the idea that you have to be in Tokyo for the top salaries. Flexibility itself is becoming a negotiating point. Maybe you take slightly less base pay for more work from home days. Some companies are even starting to adjust salaries based on location if you're fully remote. It's becoming a financial lever, not just a lifestyle choice.
And AI. The robots are coming for our jobs, or our salaries.
Huh. Well, maybe not taking the jobs directly, but AI is definitely creating a divide. Adoption might be a bit slower overall in Japan, but it's happening. People who learn to use AI effectively, writers using prompts well, marketers leveraging automation, developers using AI coding partners, they can scale their output, manage bigger projects, work faster, they become more valuable. Those who ignore these tools, their skills might become more commoditized, potentially putting downward pressure on their earning potential. The saying is true, AI won't take your job, but someone using AI effectively might. It's about augmentation.
It definitely is, especially among younger generations. They value different things: flexibility, feeling their work has purpose, fair evaluation based on merit, not just time served. So we're seeing more companies, particularly newer or more global ones, experimenting with performance-based pay structures, stock options, things like that. People are changing jobs more frequently, shorter tenures becoming more acceptable. And all of this, it just increases the pressure for more salary transparency. So it's less about just finding one safe job for life and more about staying agile.
Exactly. It's this tension between job security and market agility. The people who seem to be maximizing their earnings potential now are often playing both games. Maybe they have a stable core role, but they're constantly building skills, networking outside their company, maybe doing some side projects, almost like maintaining freelance-ready capabilities, even while employed full-time.
So final thoughts. How does someone listening right now future-proof their pay in Japan's changing landscape?
It really boils down to a few key things, I think. Adaptability is huge, being open to new tools, new ways of working, different cultures. Digital fluency, getting comfortable with AI, data analytics, automation, whatever is relevant to your field. Negotiation confidence. And that comes from knowing your worth, tracking your achievements, and being willing to ask respectfully. And building a diverse network, connecting with people across different industries, roles, backgrounds. Your network is often your best source of information and opportunity.
Well, just by sticking with us through this deep dive, you, the listener, are already way ahead of the game in understanding how Japanese compensation really works. You've peeked inside that bento box, seen all the compartments.
Absolutely. So, the action plan. Keep it simple. Research your value relentlessly. Track your accomplishments, write them down. Negotiate with confidence, but always respectfully. Learn the language, yes, but also learn the cultural subtext. And maybe, when you can, help someone else navigate this too.
The whole landscape is shifting. You might not change the entire Japanese system single-handedly, but you absolutely can change your own position within it and maybe help nudge the system along the way. If you keep learning, keep adapting, keep proving your value, even if the economy takes a dip, you don't just hold your ground. You increase your leverage. You increase your worth.